friends, it's Gwen. Welcome back to my channel. It's the end of the year, and the end of the year always brings these type of videos. Today I am here to share my best and my worst of 2017 poetry edition. I do have my regular novel edition coming soon, but today I wanted to share with you my poetry. So it's not even. I picked out the very best of the poetry and the very worst of poetry. Now, as I have said many times on my channel, poetry is very subjective to the person reading it. So depending on what your morals and values are, what your life experiences are, what you're going through currently, and just basically what your symbolism is and what you can relate to, that all has something to do with poetry. So take these with a grain of salt. I have also done a poetry recommendation video that includes more of the great poetry that I have read this year, but poetry was definitely something that I included in my reading year, so I wanted to include it in the end of the year wrap up. So this is my best and this is my worst. So I definitely have more worst than best. So let's go ahead and start with the worst poetry of 2017. One more thing I should probably tell you, these were not published in 2017. I read them in 2017. We're going to start off with Mouthful of Forevers by Clementine von Radics. I did do a full review of this poetry collection. A lot of times poetry collections can get really low scoring, like if I don't relate to it at all, if I don't find any favorites, if it just doesn't make sense, if the illustrations or photography doesn't match, or if I'm just totally confused. This is one of those that I really just did not enjoy. I didn't connect with, but definitely check out my review because I do have one of these. I will link any reviews of individual poetry collections that I've done down in the description box for you, so you could check out my more in-depth thoughts. But one of the worst, A Mouthful of Forevers. One that I want to mention on my worst list is Lavender by Christopher Poindexter. I was really sad that I didn't connect with this, and it had a lot of love poetry in it, but it was written from the male perspective. So I think that's why I didn't really connect with it. Next one is one by Jenny Browne, and that's Dear Stranger. Yeah, this one was probably the worst one that I read. I didn't get anything. The symbolism was horrible, to me. And yeah, this was just not good, you guys. Then I was super excited to read this one. This was Chasers of the Light, Poems from the Typewriter series by Knott Gregson. He's super popular on Instagram, and if he has a Tumblr, I'm sure he's popular on there because his poetry is very aesthetically pleasing. However, it's not very good. Next up on this worst list is Lacebone Beast by, I always forget, N.L. Shompole, and this is one that I read during Booktubeathon over the summer, and I just didn't connect with it at all. The cover's gorgeous, and I was really surprised. I was tabbing some favorites or some favorite lines, but I tabbed way more that just didn't make sense to me, not cool. It just seemed like a cop-out and very lazy, and more like a sentence than actual poetry with deep meaning and thought. So definitely have to put this on the worst. And then I know a lot of you guys are going to be shocked that this made the list, but I have tried several of her works. I don't really like it. I don't see what the hype is. Again, very aesthetically pleasing. The book covers are gorgeous. Her illustrations are gorgeous. I just can't get into her poetry. I believe this is the second or the third poetry collection I've read by her, and that is Leav, and this one is Memories. So it does have some poetry in the very beginning from Love and Misadventure, but then it has some new stuff in it as well. And like I said, her illustrations are amazing, but the poetry, I don't get it, you guys. I've tried so hard because she's recommended across the poetry circles, and I can't get into it. I've tried, and I actually think I have one of her other poetry collections, and I don't even know what I'm going to do about it. So that concludes my worst list. I just had a small little hand for you, but now I want to get on to the best of the best. And if you are looking to start reading poetry in 2018, if you just want to just randomly pick up some poetry for a friend or a colleague or a family member or a loved one, These are the poetry collections I would recommend buying. The first one that I will share with you is B by Sarah Kay. I love everything that I read by her. They're very short. I've read the Type, B, and there's been one other one that I've read by her, and I absolutely love everything about it. The illustrations fit with the poetry. They're deep. You think about them long after you've read them. Every sentence seems intentional, and you can get meaning, like a deeper meaning from like every word. It's just, oh gosh, it's just so good, you guys. It's so good. Okay, the next two are, it's so hard to choose like a favorite poetry book of all time, but these are definitely tied for number one, and that is High Lady and Other Random Thoughts by Max Smith. Princess Saves Herself in this one by Amanda Lovelace. So these two poetry books mean the world to me. If you will notice, I didn't tab one single poem in this book, and that is because every single poem would have been tabbed, and I just didn't want to run out of sticky notes. It was so good, you guys. I was a little worried because it was super hyped like Milk and Honey was, and I didn't really like Milk and Honey, but I read this and I loved it, and it was just so good. And I like how it kind of told like an overarching story, but it just meant so much to me, guys. I love this poet. I love her on Twitter and Instagram and her works. She has a new one coming out soon, and she talks about her current work in progress on her Twitter, so check her out there as well. But yeah, I absolutely loved this one, and it's definitely tied for my favorite poetry book of 2017. The next one that I want to talk a little bit more about is this one, High Lady and Other Random Thoughts by Max Smith. Max Smith is no longer alive, but I'm so glad I got my hands on this poetry book, which I picked up totally at random at the book exchange, because if you don't know and you don't watch my unhauls, when I unhaul books, I take them to two places, the Book Exchange of Norfolk, or I take them to my local library. The Book Exchange gives you store credit, and you can use it for anything in the store. So I went to their poetry section, and I got two poetry collections that day. This was one of them, and I just saw it and I was like, I like the cover. I like that it's old. It was like published in the like 60s. Let's see. And no, sorry, in 73. And I was just like, yes, I absolutely want to get my hands on this copy. And then you have a copy right here on the back of the poet. And I read this and I just connected with it on like a deep spiritual level. I love that it was sad but happy all at the same time. It was very hopeful. It was so well written. The first part is talking to a lady that he loves, and then there's more poetry in there, and that's the Other Random Thoughts portion. I didn't tab anything because I loved everything about this. So if you are looking for some great poetry, I would definitely recommend, I keep turning it backwards. If you're looking for some great poetry, definitely pick up these two without a doubt. The Princess Saves Herself in this one, and they do have like a collector's edition of this now, but I just have the one that was like first printed, and it's beautiful still. And this one, you may have a little bit of difficulty finding a copy of this, but it is out there. I have seen a couple of copies floating around now, so definitely these two. All three of these got 5 stars from me. So yes, definitely pick up these. But like I said, I will have my regular best and worst of 2017 coming soon. But I did read quite a bit of poetry this year, so I just wanted to do a separate video for you guys and encourage you once again to pick up some poetry. But that's all for today's video. Thank you for joining me. Sorry you can hear my dog in the background, but that's all I have for you today. I'll see you again in my next video. Bye!